I need to get this off my chest because honestly, I'm still processing what happened and how I ended up here. My wife Catherine and I have been married for 3 years, and I thought we were solid. We met when we were both struggling financially. I was working retail management, making decent money, but nothing fancy, and she was climbing the corporate ladder at a marketing firm. The thing is, over the past year, Catherine's career really took off. She got promoted twice, started making serious money, and suddenly began acting like she was too good for our life together. I should have seen the signs earlier, but you know how it is when you love someone. You make excuses. You think things will get better. The Christmas party incident happened 3 weeks ago. Catherine had been talking about this company party for months, how important it was for her image, how she needed to make the right impression. She bought herself a designer dress that cost more than my monthly car payment and kept making comments about how I better not embarrass her. Red flag number one. But again, I thought she was just stressed about work. So we get to this fancy hotel ballroom, and everything seems fine at first. I'm talking to her coworkers, being polite, trying to be the supportive husband. Then Catherine starts drinking. Not just casual party drinking, she was downing champagne like it was water. By the time they did the award ceremony, she was completely wasted. That's when she grabbed the microphone during the open mic portion. I watched in horror as my wife stood up there in front of her entire department, probably 50 people, including her boss and senior management, and started talking about how proud she was of her success this year. Normal stuff at first, thanking the company, talking about her goals. Then she looked directly at me and said, "Ladies, let me give you some advice about marriage. Never, and I mean never, settle for a man who can't even afford to pay for your nail appointments." She gestured toward me sitting at our table and continued that she learned the hard way what happens when you marry someone who thinks dinner at Olive Garden is fancy. The room went dead quiet, but Catherine kept going. She told everyone that I was a pathetic excuse for a man who couldn't provide for his wife properly, and that all the women in the room should take notes about what not to look for in a husband. I sat there completely frozen. Her coworkers were staring at me with this mixture of pity and disgust. Some were recording on their phones. Her boss looked mortified. Catherine was up there laughing like she'd just told the funniest joke in the world, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd just humiliated both of us in front of the people she works with every day. I managed to get her off that stage and out of there, but the damage was done. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. When I tried to talk to her about it, she said I was being too sensitive and that everyone knew she was just joking around, about how I'm apparently not man enough for her. But wait, it gets worse. 2 weeks later, Catherine went to her best friend Lily's bachelorette party in Vegas. I found out what happened there because she was stupid enough to live stream parts of it on Instagram. I'm at home Saturday night, just trying to have a quiet evening, when I get a notification that Catherine is going live. I opened it expecting to see typical bachelorette party stuff, maybe some dancing, some drinks, whatever. Instead, I see my wife sitting in some hotel room with Lily and about 6 other women, and she's holding up printed copies of our wedding photos. Our wedding photos. She'd actually brought physical copies of our wedding pictures to Vegas so she could mock them on social media. She's showing everyone the photo of me in my wedding suit, which, yes, I bought off the rack because we were on a budget, and telling these women to look at this loser's cheap suit. She said she was already meeting with divorce attorneys behind my back and couldn't wait to be free of her mistake. The other women were laughing and making comments about how she could do so much better. But the worst part was when she held up our first dance photo and said, "This is what happens when you marry someone too broke and useless to deserve a woman like me." She actually said that to thousands of people watching her Instagram live, about our wedding day, about what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. I watched the whole thing live, sitting in our living room, watching my wife broadcast to the internet that our entire marriage was a joke to her. The comments were brutal. People saying I looked like I couldn't afford to take her to McDonald's, asking if I worked at the suit rental place, making jokes about how she was obviously out of my league. The stream went on for almost 20 minutes. She talked about how embarrassed she was to be seen with me, how her friends had been telling her for years that she settled, how she was basically just waiting for the right moment to leave. 20 minutes of my wife explaining to strangers on the internet why I wasn't good enough for her. Then she posted on Facebook the next day, made a whole post about how she was ready to upgrade her life and leave behind people who were holding her back. She didn't mention me by name, but everyone knew exactly what she meant. Her family was liking and commenting. Her coworkers from the Christmas party were chiming in with support. It was like watching my entire marriage get dissected in public. Here's what Catherine didn't know, though. I wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for myself while she was busy destroying our relationship on social media. I've been watching everything, planning my response, and preparing for exactly this moment. See, when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them. and Catherine has been showing me very clearly that she thinks I'm beneath her. What she doesn't realize is that while she was busy broadcasting her contempt for me to the world, I was busy making sure I'd be just fine without her. The company Christmas party wasn't the beginning of this. It was just the moment I realized our marriage was already over, and it was time to act. I'll update you all soon with what happened next, because trust me, this story is far from over. Catherine thinks she holds all the cards, but she's about to learn that humiliating your husband publicly comes with consequences she never saw coming. Update 1. Holy shit! The response to this has been incredible. Thank you to everyone who's been messaging me with support and advice. Some of you have asked for more details about what I meant when I said I was preparing. So let me fill you in on what's been happening since that Facebook post. The day after Catherine got back from Vegas, she was acting like everything was normal. Making coffee, talking about her week at work, asking what I wanted for dinner. Like she hadn't just spent the weekend telling the internet that I was a loser she couldn't wait to divorce. I played along, but inside I was done. Completely done. What Catherine doesn't know is that I've been talking to a lawyer for the past month. Not because I was planning to leave her, but because after the Christmas party incident, I realized I needed to understand my rights. Good thing I did, because everything she posted online is now documented evidence of emotional abuse and public humiliation. She also doesn't know that I've been tracking our finances very carefully. See, Catherine makes more money than me now, but our accounts are joint, and I handle most of the day-to-day banking. While she was in Vegas bragging about meeting with divorce attorneys, I was meeting with my own attorney to understand exactly what I'm entitled to and how to protect myself. The best part? Catherine thinks she's so smart for planning this divorce behind my back, but she's been sloppy, really sloppy. She's been using our shared iPad for her attorney research, and apparently she doesn't understand how Apple Sync works. I've seen every email, every Google search, every consultation appointment she's scheduled. She's been planning this for 3 months, not 2 weeks like I originally thought. But here's where it gets interesting. Catherine's big plan is to paint me as financially dependent on her so she can minimize any alimony or settlement. She's been building a case that I'm a deadbeat who contributes nothing to our household. What she hasn't considered is that I have documentation of every contribution I've made to our life together, including the down payment on our house that came entirely from my savings, and the car that's in both our names but that I've been making payments on from my personal account. Yesterday, Catherine made another mistake. She came home and started talking about how she needed some space to think about our relationship. She suggested I stay at my brother's place for a few days while she figured things out. The way she said it, all sympathetic and concerned, like she was doing me a favor by letting me know our marriage was in trouble. I told her that if she needed space, maybe she should be the one to leave, since I wasn't the one who had a problem with our marriage. That's when her mask slipped a little. She said some things about how this was her house too, and she wasn't going anywhere, how she'd worked hard for what we had and deserved to enjoy it. Her house, too. That was rich, considering my name is the only one on the mortgage because her credit was trashed when we got married. But I didn't say that. Instead, I just nodded and told her I'd think about it. What I'm actually thinking about is how satisfying it's going to be when Catherine realizes that all her public humiliation and secret planning has accomplished is documenting exactly why our marriage failed. Every Instagram story, every Facebook post, every recorded conversation she thinks is so clever. It's all evidence that she deliberately destroyed our relationship and tried to damage my reputation in the process. She thinks she's playing chess while I'm playing checkers. But Catherine has no idea what's coming next. More updates coming soon. This is just getting started. Update 1. All right, guys, buckle up because this week has been absolutely insane. If you thought Catherine was bold before, wait until you hear what she pulled this time. And yes, I finally confronted her about everything. But not before I discovered something that explains so much about her behavior. First, thank you to everyone who commented and messaged me. Shout out to the person who told me to check our shared accounts immediately. You were absolutely right and it saved my ass. More on that in a minute. So Tuesday morning, Catherine comes downstairs with this fake sympathetic look on her face and tells me she's been doing a lot of thinking about us. She sits down at our kitchen table like she's about to deliver some profound wisdom, and starts explaining that she's realized we've grown apart and want different things in life. Standard breakup speech stuff, right? But then she says the house feels too tense for both of us to keep living here. And since I'm clearly struggling with her success, maybe it would be better if I moved out temporarily so we could both have some space to figure things out. Temporarily. As if I'm stupid enough to fall for that. I asked her how long she was thinking temporarily meant, and she got all vague about it. Maybe a few months, maybe longer, just until we could work through our issues. She even offered to help me find a nice apartment somewhere. Wasn't that generous of her? Here's the thing, though. Catherine was acting like she was doing me a favor, but I could tell she was nervous. She kept fidgeting with her coffee cup and wouldn't make eye contact when she talked about the timeline. This wasn't some spontaneous idea she'd had while soul-searching. This was part of whatever plan she'd been cooking up with her attorney. I told her I needed to think about it, and that's when she got pushy. She started talking about how staying in the same house was clearly making both of us miserable, how I seemed so angry lately, how maybe some distance would help us remember what we loved about each other. Classic manipulation, trying to make me feel guilty for being upset about her publicly humiliating. But the real kicker came when she mentioned that her mother was planning to visit next week, and it might be awkward if I was here while they were trying to have family discussions about our marriage. Her mother, who Catherine has been feeding lies to about our relationship for months. That's when I decided it was time to stop playing along. I asked Catherine directly if she was planning to divorce me, and you should have seen her face. She got all flustered and started backtracking about how she wasn't sure what she wanted yet, how these conversations were premature, how she just needed space to think clearly. So I told her about the Instagram live stream. I described exactly what I'd watched her do in Vegas, word for word. How she'd mocked our wedding photos, talked about meeting with divorce attorneys, called me too broke and useless to deserve her. Her entire fake concerned wife act just evaporated. Catherine's first response was to deny it ever happened. She claimed I must have seen something else. Maybe I was confused about what I was watching. When I offered to show her the screen recordings I'd made, she switched tactics and said I was taking everything out of context. Apparently, broadcasting to thousands of people that your husband is a loser is just harmless venting between friends. Then she got angry, really angry. She said I had no right to monitor her social media, that recording her without permission was creepy and controlling. She accused me of violating her privacy and being paranoid about everything she did. The audacity was incredible. She publicly humiliated me on the internet, but I'm the problem for watching it happen. I asked her about the divorce attorneys she'd mentioned, and that's when Catherine tried to gaslight me completely. She claimed she'd never said anything about attorneys, that I was obviously misremembering or making things up. She suggested I might be having some kind of breakdown from work stress and that maybe I should consider therapy. But here's where it gets really good. While Catherine was busy trying to convince me I was crazy, I was watching her facial expressions very carefully. Every time I mentioned something specific from her Vegas trip, she'd get this little flash of panic before putting her confused act back on. She knew exactly what I was talking about, but she was committed to denying everything. That's when I pulled out my phone and started playing the audio recording I'd made of her live stream. Her own voice, clear as day, telling her friends about her pathetic husband and his cheap wedding suit. Catherine went completely silent and just stared at the phone like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. After the recording finished, she sat there for maybe 30 seconds without saying anything. Then she looked at me and said, "Well, you weren't supposed to see that." Not an apology, not an explanation, just annoyance that I'd caught her. I asked her why she would say those things about me, about our marriage, to strangers on the internet. And Catherine's response was honestly worse than the original humiliation. She said she was drunk and emotional about Lily's wedding, that watching her friend get married to someone successful made her realize how disappointed she was in how our lives had turned out. She explained that all her friends were married to men who could provide properly for their wives, who took them on nice vacations and bought them jewelry, and made them feel special. Meanwhile, she was stuck with someone who thought taking her to chain restaurants was romantic and who couldn't even afford to upgrade her engagement ring after 3 years of marriage. Catherine actually said the words "stuck with someone" about her own husband. She said she'd worked hard to build a successful career and deserved a partner who matched her ambition and income level. She said watching me struggle financially while she thrived professionally was embarrassing for her, especially in front of her colleagues and friends. But the absolute worst part was when she said she'd only stayed married to me this long because she felt sorry for me, that she'd been hoping I would eventually figure out how to be more successful, but it was becoming clear that this was just who I was and she couldn't pretend to be happy about it anymore. I asked her if this was why she wanted me to move out, and Catherine said yes. She needed space to decide whether our marriage was worth saving or if she should just cut her losses and find someone more compatible with her lifestyle. That's when I told her about the mortgage, how the house she wanted me to leave was actually in my name, only because her credit was damaged when we bought it, how the car she drove to work every day was registered to me because she couldn't qualify for the loan, how most of our shared assets were legally mine because I'd been the one with stable credit and steady employment when we made those purchases. Catherine's face went white. She'd been so busy thinking about her recent salary increases that she'd forgotten how our finances were actually structured. All her talk about deserving better and upgrading her life suddenly got very quiet when she realized she might be the one who'd have to move out. Then I mentioned the credit card bills I'd been tracking. See, while Catherine was making more money than ever, she was also spending more money than ever. The designer clothes, The expensive dinners with her work friends, the weekend trips. She'd been funding her upgraded lifestyle with debt, not her salary increases. But here's the biggest bombshell of all. Remember how I said Catherine had been sloppy with the shared iPad? Well, it turns out her attorney consultations weren't the only thing she'd been hiding. She's been messaging someone named Tyler for the past 4 months. And based on their conversation history, Tyler isn't just a friend. I didn't go through Catherine's messages to spy on her. They kept popping up as notifications while I was using the iPad for work. But once I saw them, I had to understand what was happening. Catherine has been having an emotional affair, possibly physical too, with a guy from her company's partner firm. The messages were everything you'd expect. Tyler telling Catherine she deserves so much better than her current situation. Catherine complaining about feeling unappreciated at home. Tyler suggesting romantic getaways and expensive restaurants. Catherine talking about how excited she was to finally be with someone who understood her ambitions. The timeline matches perfectly with when Catherine's attitude toward me changed. Right around the time she started messaging Tyler was when she began making comments about my income and lifestyle. Tyler was feeding her ideas about what successful women should expect from their partners, and Catherine was eating it up. I haven't confronted her about Tyler yet because I'm still processing it all, but it explains everything. The public humiliation, the divorce planning, the sudden urgency to get me out of the house. Catherine isn't just unhappy with our marriage. She's already moved on to someone else and is trying to clear the way for her new relationship. The best part? Tyler is married too. Catherine thinks she's upgrading to this successful, sophisticated guy, but she's actually just becoming the other woman in someone else's marriage. And based on their messages, Tyler hasn't mentioned anything about leaving his wife. He's just enjoying having Catherine as his side piece while she destroys her own marriage for him. I'm meeting with my attorney again tomorrow to discuss next steps. Catherine thinks she's been playing chess while I've been playing checkers, but she has no idea how many moves ahead I've been planning. Stay tuned because this story is about to get a lot more interesting. More updates coming soon. And Catherine, if you're reading this, yeah, I know about Tyler. Update 2. Guys, I need to get this off my chest because what happened this week was absolutely wild. Thank you for all the support on my last update. Some of you called exactly what would happen when I confronted Catherine about Tyler, and you were right on the money. So Thursday night, Catherine came home from work, acting completely normal. She was actually humming while making dinner, like we hadn't just had that massive fight earlier in the week about her Vegas live stream and the divorce planning. Like everything was just fine between us. The audacity was incredible. I let her get comfortable, let her think we were settling back into our routine. Then, I casually asked about her day at work and whether she'd had any interesting conversations with colleagues. Catherine started going on about some project presentation and mentioned working with their partner firm on a new campaign. That's when I dropped Tyler's name. I asked if Tyler was involved in that project since I'd noticed they seemed to work together a lot lately. The change in Catherine's face was immediate. She went from relaxed and chatty to completely frozen in about 2 seconds. She asked why I was asking about Tyler specifically, and I could hear the panic in her voice even though she was trying to sound casual. So I told her the truth, that I'd been seeing his messages pop up on our shared iPad for months, and I was curious about their working relationship. Catherine tried to play it off like Tyler was just a colleague, that they only communicated about work projects. She said I was being paranoid and reading too much into normal professional interactions, but I could see her hands shaking as she stirred the pasta sauce. I pulled out my phone and started reading some of Tyler's messages out loud. The one where he told Catherine she deserves so much better than her current situation. The one where Catherine complained about feeling unappreciated at home. The one where Tyler suggested they meet for dinner at that expensive steakhouse downtown to discuss her future plans. Catherine's defense was pathetic. She claimed Tyler was just being supportive during a difficult time in our marriage, that it was normal for coworkers to vent to each other about personal problems. She said I was twisting innocent conversations into something inappropriate because I was insecure about her professional relationships. But then I read the message where Catherine told Tyler she couldn't wait to finally be with someone who understood her ambitions and appreciated her success. The one where she said she was tired of pretending to be happy with someone who couldn't match her lifestyle. The one where she said she was planning her exit strategy and Tyler was helping her see what she really deserved. That's when Catherine completely changed tactics. Instead of denying the affair, she got angry at me for violating her privacy. She said I had no right to read her personal messages, that monitoring her communications was controlling and abusive behavior. She actually used the word abusive about me reading messages that were popping up on our shared device. I asked her how long she'd been involved with Tyler, and Catherine said it wasn't what I thought, that they hadn't done anything physical yet, as if that made it better. She said Tyler was just a friend who helped her realize she'd been settling in her marriage and deserved better. Catherine tried to turn the whole thing around on me. She said the reason she'd connected with Tyler in the first place was because I'd been emotionally unavailable and unsupportive of her career growth. She claimed I'd been holding her back from reaching her potential and that Tyler was the first person who truly understood her drive and ambition. She said Tyler made her feel valued and appreciated in ways I never had. That talking to him reminded her what it felt like to be with someone successful and sophisticated, someone who could match her intellectually and professionally. She actually said Tyler inspired her to want more from life than what she had with me. I pointed out that Tyler was married, and Catherine got defensive about that too. She said Tyler's marriage was complicated, that he and his wife had grown apart just like we had. She claimed they were planning to handle their divorces properly and start fresh together once everything was settled. The delusion was incredible. Catherine actually believed Tyler was going to leave his wife for her. She'd convinced herself that their affair was some great love story, instead of what it really was, a married man taking advantage of her marriage problems to get some action on the side. I asked Catherine if Tyler knew about her plans to divorce me, and she admitted they'd discussed it extensively. Apparently, Tyler had been encouraging her to get out of our marriage for months, telling her she was too good for someone like me. He'd been feeding her lines about deserving a partner who could provide the lifestyle she wanted. But here's the really good part. I asked Catherine if Tyler had mentioned anything about leaving his wife, and she got vague. She said they were taking things slow, making sure they handled everything the right way. When I pressed for specifics, she admitted Tyler hadn't actually filed for divorce yet but was planning to soon. That's when I told Catherine I'd looked Tyler up online. See, while she was busy having her emotional affair, I was doing my research. Tyler's been married for 8 years and has 2 young kids. His social media is full of family photos and posts about what a dedicated father and husband he is. His wife is a successful doctor who makes more money than Catherine ever will. Catherine's face went white when I showed her Tyler's Instagram account. Photo after photo of him with his wife and kids at family vacations, anniversary dinners, school events. Posts from just last week about how grateful he was for his amazing family and how blessed he felt to have found his soulmate. I asked Catherine if this looked like a man who was planning to leave his wife, and she started making excuses. She said Tyler had to maintain appearances for his family's sake, that social media didn't tell the whole story. She said private messages showed his true feelings, not public posts. But I could see the doubt creeping in. Catherine realized she'd been believing exactly what Tyler wanted her to believe, that he was unhappy in his marriage and looking for a way out. The reality was he had a perfect family life and was just using Catherine for entertainment. That's when Catherine tried to flip the script completely. She said even if Tyler wasn't available, that didn't change the fact that our marriage was broken. She said discovering what she could have with someone else made her realize how unfulfilled she'd been with me. Catherine claimed she'd been trying to make our marriage work for years, but I'd never made an effort to grow or improve myself. She said watching her friends marry successful men who could provide properly for their families made her realize she'd settled too early and deserved better. She brought up the Christmas party incident and said she'd only been honest about her feelings because she was tired of pretending everything was fine. She said humiliating me publicly wasn't the plan, but alcohol made her speak the truth she'd been hiding for too long. Catherine actually tried to justify the Vegas live stream too. She said her friends had been asking for years why she stayed with someone who couldn't afford to take care of her properly, and she'd finally admitted they were right. She said posting about it wasn't meant to hurt me. It was meant to help her process the realization that our marriage was a mistake. The gaslighting was unreal. Catherine was trying to rewrite our entire relationship history to make herself the victim. According to her version, I'd been the problem all along, and she'd just been too kind to say anything until Tyler helped her see the truth. I asked Catherine what she wanted to happen next, and she said she thought we should move forward with the separation. She said we'd both be happier apart, and maybe someday we could be friends again. She actually used the phrase conscious uncoupling, like we were some celebrity couple. But then I dropped the real bombshell. I told Catherine I'd already filed for divorce 3 days ago. While she was busy planning her exit strategy with Tyler, I was busy protecting myself legally and financially. Her whole plan to ease me out gradually while she got her affairs in order was already blown up. Catherine panicked. She started asking about the house, the cars, our joint accounts. She wanted to know what I'd told my lawyer about our finances and whether I'd mentioned the Tyler situation. For the first time in months, Catherine seemed to realize she might not be in control of this situation after all. I told her she'd need to get her own attorney because mine was already handling everything. Catherine started crying and saying she never meant for things to go this far, that maybe we could work things out in counseling, but it was too late for that, and we both knew it. The best part is that I haven't even started the real consequences yet. Catherine thinks losing our marriage is the worst thing that's going to happen to her. She has no idea what's coming next. Stay tuned for the final update because Catherine's about to learn that publicly humiliating your husband and destroying your marriage for another man comes with a price she never saw coming. Final update. All right, guys, this is it. The final update you've all been waiting for. Thank you to everyone who's been following this insanity and offering support. What happened this week was absolutely perfect, and I mean that in the most satisfying way possible. So after our confrontation about Tyler on Thursday night, Catherine spent the weekend acting like she was still in control of the situation. She kept talking about how we needed to handle our separation maturely, how she wanted to make sure we divided everything fairly, how important it was that we remained respectful throughout the process. The audacity was incredible. Catherine actually thought she was going to manage our divorce the same way she'd tried to manage our marriage, with her calling all the shots while I went along with whatever she decided. She had no idea what was already in motion. Monday morning, Catherine left for work like any other day. She mentioned she might be late coming home because she was having dinner with colleagues to discuss some big project. I knew exactly which colleague she meant, but I didn't say anything. I just told her to have a good day and watched her drive away in the car that's registered in my name. The moving truck arrived at 10 a.m. I'd arranged everything the week before while Catherine was busy planning her future with Tyler. Professional movers, storage unit already paid for, everything documented with receipts and photos. By the time Catherine got home from her romantic dinner, the house was completely empty of everything that belonged to me. And I mean everything. My clothes, my furniture, my electronics, my books, my kitchen equipment, even my houseplants. The only things left were items that belonged to Catherine or things we'd bought together that I didn't want anyway. The house went from feeling like a home to feeling like an empty shell in one day. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen counter where Catherine couldn't miss them, along with a copy of the asset division my lawyer had prepared. Since my name is the only one on the mortgage, since I'd contributed the down payment from my personal savings, and since I have documentation of Catherine's affair and public humiliation campaign, the legal situation is pretty straightforward. Catherine's first text came at 8:47 p.m. Just one word. Seriously? Like she couldn't believe I'd actually followed through on protecting myself. Then the messages started flooding in. Where was all my stuff? Why didn't I discuss this with her first? How could I just disappear without warning? But the real panic set in when Catherine realized what the divorce papers actually said. She called me screaming about how unfair the asset division was, how she deserved half of everything we'd built together. I calmly explained that, according to my lawyer, her public statements about our marriage being a mistake and her documented affair complicated her claims significantly. Catherine tried to backtrack everything. She said the Vegas live stream was just drunken venting that didn't mean anything. She claimed the Tyler situation was blown out of proportion and that they'd never actually done anything physical. She even said she was willing to go to marriage counseling if I'd just come home and work things out. But it was too late for all that. I told Catherine I'd given her plenty of chances to treat our marriage with respect, and she'd chosen to humiliate me publicly while planning her exit strategy with another man. Actions have consequences, and these were hers. The best part was when Catherine started asking about the house. She wanted to know if she could afford the mortgage payments on her own, whether she'd be able to keep living there during the divorce proceedings. I reminded her that since the house is in my name only, she'd need to find somewhere else to live pretty quickly. Catherine completely lost it. She said I was being vindictive and cruel, that I was punishing her for being honest about her feelings. She claimed I was trying to destroy her life just because she'd outgrown our relationship. The victim mentality was unreal. Even after everything she'd done, Catherine still thought she was the wronged party. That's when I told her about the other consequences of her choices. See, while Catherine was busy having dinner with Tyler, I'd been busy having a conversation with his wife. Remember how I mentioned Tyler's social media was full of family photos? Well, his wife is very active online too, and it wasn't hard to reach out to her. Catherine's face went white when I told her Tyler's wife now knew about their affair. Apparently, Mrs. Tyler is a successful doctor who doesn't take kindly to homewreckers trying to destroy her family. She'd already confronted Tyler, and let's just say his enthusiasm for leaving his wife and kids for Catherine evaporated pretty quickly. The Tyler situation imploded exactly like I knew it would. Married men who cheat rarely leave their wives for the other woman, especially when that wife makes more money than the affair partner ever will. Tyler went into full damage control mode, telling his wife that Catherine had been pursuing him and he'd just been too polite to shut it down completely. Catherine tried calling Tyler after I told her what happened, but he'd already blocked her on everything. The great love affair that was supposed to justify destroying our marriage lasted exactly as long as it took Tyler to realize his wife might divorce him and take half his assets. Catherine went from feeling like the sophisticated other woman to feeling like a discarded side piece in about 24 hours. But wait, it gets even better. Remember Catherine's big Christmas party humiliation speech about how successful she was and how she deserved better than a husband who couldn't afford her lifestyle? Well, it turns out her coworkers have been talking about that incident ever since it happened. Catherine's boss called her into a meeting this week to discuss her behavior at company events. Apparently, several employees complained about feeling uncomfortable after watching Catherine publicly humiliate her husband at what was supposed to be a professional gathering. The company has policies about maintaining appropriate boundaries between personal and professional conduct. Catherine didn't get fired, but she got a formal reprimand that goes in her permanent file. Her boss made it clear that any future incidents reflecting poorly on the company's image would result in serious disciplinary action. So much for Catherine's big career success being worth destroying our marriage over. The irony is perfect. Catherine thought she was trading up from her boring husband to her exciting affair partner and her glamorous corporate lifestyle. Instead, she ended up with no husband, no boyfriend, a damaged reputation at work, and the prospect of finding her own apartment on a single income while paying divorce attorney fees. Meanwhile, I'm living in a nice rental house across town, sleeping better than I have in months, and looking forward to starting over without someone who thought I wasn't good enough for her. The relief of not having to deal with Catherine's constant criticism and manipulation is incredible. Catherine's still texting me daily, alternating between anger and desperation. She keeps saying we can work things out, that she's learned from her mistakes, that she never meant for things to go this far. But actions have consequences, and these are hers. The woman who stood up at her company Christmas party and told 50 people that I was a pathetic excuse for a man who couldn't afford to take care of her properly is now facing the reality of taking care of herself. The woman who live-streamed herself mocking our wedding photos and bragging about meeting with divorce attorneys is now panicking about her own legal fees and living situation. Catherine thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. But she forgot that in chess, sometimes the pawns can take out the queen. She humiliated me publicly, planned her exit strategy in secret, had an affair with a married man, and then acted shocked when I protected myself accordingly. To everyone who's been following this story, thank you for the support and validation. Catherine spent months making me feel like I was the problem in our marriage, like I wasn't good enough for her success and ambition. Having thousands of strangers confirm that her behavior was completely unacceptable helped me remember my own worth. And to Catherine, who I know is probably reading this, yes, I know about your Reddit account too. Actions have consequences. You chose to humiliate your husband publicly and destroy your marriage for a man who is never going to leave his wife for you. These are the results of those choices. I'm done with updates now. Time to focus on building a life with people who actually respect and value me. Catherine can figure out her own problems from here.